Ruthie Epstein from the New York Civil Liberties Union, who's joined us from her busy day to talk about exactly what's going on with the legal side of this travel ban that's I call it travel ban 2.0. You know, the Muslim ban 2.0 that's come up out of the White House now. That's supposed to be an improvement, but it's really in some ways making it worse by trying to make it more palatable. Welcome, Ruthie, to WBAI.
Hi there. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, great to have you on. So, Ruthie, what is the New York Civil Liberties doing right now? What is their reaction to I call it Muslim ban 2.0? I don't know what you guys are calling it, but can you describe what's going on with this rewrite of the Muslim ban and what it means? Is it any better, or is it something we should be just as resolutely opposed to as the first rollout?
Absolutely. Well, we agree completely with you. This is Muslim ban version 2.0. The administration has made a few changes to the original version that was issued on the evening of January 27th, as we all remember that chaotic weekend at JFK and across the country. That ban was subject to a temporary restraining order or a stay by the courts. And so this administration went back to the drawing board, made some changes, made it very clear before even issuing this new ban that it would have substantially the same impact as the initial ban, and issued version 2.0 this past Monday, March 6th. So the old ban, its highlights were that it suspended the U.S. refugee resettlement program for 120 days for 4 months. That was the first thing it did. It suspended the admission of Syrian refugees indefinitely, and it suspended the entry of nationals from 7 Muslim-majority countries for 90 days. And those countries were Iran, Iraq, Syria, Yemen, Sudan, Somalia, and Libya. So that last piece is what caused so much chaos at the airports across the country. The new ban makes some minor modifications. It still suspends the refugee program for 120 days, but doesn't have an indefinite suspension for Syrian refugees. And it still suspends the entry of nationals from 6 Muslim-majority countries. Iraq is now off the list. So now we've got Iran, Syria, Yemen, Sudan, Somalia, and Libya. And the new version of the ban does have exceptions, including for people who already have visas. So as far as the ACLU and the NYCLU, the New York State affiliate of the ACLU, as far as we are concerned, this is Muslim ban version 2.0. It remains discriminatory against Muslims. It remains illegal. It remains unconstitutional, and we will continue to do everything we can to fight back.
Mm-hmm. And why is it unconstitutional? What does unconstitutional mean, I guess, because it's thrown around a lot, but it has a specific meaning. And what does it mean when something is unconstitutional? And if it's unconstitutional, is it enforced in the first place at all?
It's an excellent question. President Trump has made it clear to the entire world that he wants to ban Muslims from the United States. We heard that throughout his campaign. He was shameless in his demonization of many different categories of people, many different kinds of people. He was Catholic in his demonization of people who don't look like him, and Muslims were among those categories of people. So he was unashamed in his promises to ban Muslims from the United States. He claimed that this was for national security purposes. There's all sorts of evidence making it clear that that makes no sense whatsoever. Mm-hmm. But because the First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution protects discrimination or protects religious freedom,
yeah.
The clear intent of this ban to discriminate against a particular religion is what makes it unconstitutional.
So even though it might not specifically say Muslim ban, in the context of everything he said, a judge can look at that and say, "This is, come on, a Muslim ban." I don't care what you argue as far as it not being in the actual wording of the law itself.
Precisely, he's made it clear to everyone that this is his intent, and we intend to hold him to his words.
I see. And so what is the immediate effect? Let's go back to the first Muslim ban 1.0. I remember I was sitting at home, and all of a sudden I got a call from Florida, a friend of mine saying, "Are you out at Kennedy Airport?" And I said, "Why? What's going on at Kennedy Airport?" I turned on the television, and oh my God, there was thousands of people out there. How did that occur? How did that break down exactly? It was such a surprise.
Yeah, so New Yorkers and people across the country were angry when they saw what the text of this ban looked like. If you remember that Friday evening, the original Muslim ban was an executive order that was issued around 5 p.m. Eastern Time on a Friday. So clearly the administration was trying to avoid the news cycle, the Friday news cycle. But they had not predicted, I presume, the outroar, the outrage that would come from citizens and immigrants across the country. So that's what we saw at the airports. The most immediate impact of the ban on a very logistical level was that Customs and Border Protection officers at international airports across the country did not receive instructions from HQ in Washington, D.C. about how they were supposed to implement this executive order, which we learned in subsequent media reports in the following days. But that meant they didn't know what to do. They didn't know what they were supposed to do. What they did know is that nationals from these 7 Muslim-majority countries had been named in the executive order, so they started denying people entry upon their arrival after long international travel, international flights. Individuals got to the U.S., and in our case as New Yorkers, got to JFK. They had visas to enter the United States. They had valid visas, but they were detained. So that gave rise to litigation, but that also gave rise to outrage across the country. So that's what happened that weekend.
Mm-hmm. And so it's what's interesting is that people had visas, people had a legal right to enter the United States, and they were denied entry. They were detained. Very disturbing. And then it's come to my attention that we're not even sure all the people who were detained, that the government did not give out information as to everybody who was detained, and we don't know what happened to everybody who was stopped at the airport. Some might have been sent back, and we don't even know who they are.
That's my understanding as well, that there are still a number of people who did have valid visas, did already have permission to enter the United States, who were turned around and who still haven't been able to get back to the U.S. So the ACLU and our partner organizations are working to make sure that those individuals who do want to come back to the U.S. and have those visas that were valid on January 27th are able to do so.
Are they? Is anybody being held still because of what happened on that weekend?
To my knowledge, no one is.
So they were released, but some were held for a while, for a few days before they were released.
Absolutely, and then some were turned around and sent back to their country of origin.
And who pays for sending them back? I mean, that's a long trip. It costs thousands of dollars to come across the world, and then they send you back. Who pays for that?
Yeah, absolutely. I sincerely doubt that the Department of Homeland Security and the Trump administration will have reimbursed people for those flights. I mean, as we know, this administration has not reimbursed the city of New York yet for the NYPD costs for security around Trump Towers.
I see. So this seems to be, I mean, you're an attorney, you're with the Civil Liberties Union. It seems like, the next thing is, are we going to have camps? And I don't mean that facetiously, because I remember when, back in the 80s, when Haitian and Salvadoran refugees were picked up and were put into down in South Florida, large camps. I mean, most Americans don't know, but as you know, they go back to the days when Japanese Americans were held in internment camps across over 100,000 in camps across America. But as late as the 80s and 90s, people were kept in camps in South Florida by the thousands that were something out of a horror movie. Are we seeing the possibility of the opening up of detention camps and things like that? Because and the reason I say that is they seem to be just stamping all over people's rights as if they don't even exist.
Yes, it's a fair question. Those tent camps from the 80s that, as you point out, were erected to hold Haitians and others who were arriving in Florida and elsewhere in the country we're the beginning of what's now a massive U.S. immigration detention system. So even today, and even pre-Trump, under the Obama administration and under the Bush and the Clinton administration before then, we have a shadow immigration detention system in this country. Congress funds Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE, to house up to 34,000 immigrants daily in jails, private prisons, and ICE-run facilities across the country. And this is essentially prison for immigrants. They're being held on civil authority. They haven't been charged with a crime. Most of them are just awaiting their next hearing. So it's essentially pretrial detention already, and that's the current state of affairs. Trump issued a couple of executive orders 2 days before the January 27th order, the Muslim ban that got so much attention and was so disruptive. But 2 days before that, he issued two very devastating immigration-related executive orders. And one of those orders promised to dramatically expand the immigration detention system in this country, particularly at the southern border. But really, I think we'll see that impact across the country.
Mm-hmm. I see. So, what does that mean? What would they do with that? How does that affect people's lives?
Yeah. So, first of all, they would have to expand current detention bed capacity. So they'd be building new jails, new prison facilities, or they'd be contracting with counties that already have jails to expand those jails or to rent out some of those jails to ICE. So I expect that we'll see that playing out at the local level across the country. But in terms of what it actually means for people's lives, what it means is that any immigrant who is subject, any non-citizen who is subject under current immigration law to potential detention and deportation might actually see themselves detained. It means instead of 34,000 people detained on a daily basis, we'll see 40,000, we'll see 50,000, we'll see 60,000. This is what this administration wants to do. It's what they promised to do. I expect that this Congress will be more than willing to fund the Trump administration to do it. So, unfortunately, the outlook is not good. I
see. Now, two directions I want to go. One is, during his campaign, he said flat out he wanted to deport 11 million people, basically. I don't know if he used that exact number, but the people, he said pretty much everybody in the country illegally from Mexico and every other country added up together, 10, 11 million people, he would deport them all. Is that still a possibility? And how would that affect our lives in America and our civil rights and civil liberties if that were to happen?
Yeah, I mean, it would devastate this country culturally, economically, devastate in terms of our expectation of having our rights protected. But he can't do it. He can't pull it off. It would be tremendously expensive. It would cost billions and billions of dollars. And I don't think that Americans would stand for it. A few days after the election, he went on 60 Minutes and revised downward his promise to deport 2 to 3 million, quote, criminal aliens. So I think I imagine that that's where his head is at right now, although far be it from me to go into his head.
Right. I see.
Deporting 2 to 3 million people is still tremendously expensive, but it's slightly more realistic, unfortunately, and it would devastate our country. It would devastate our families. It would devastate our communities. It would devastate our workplaces and our schools. And that is just really, it's not the America that I want to live in, and I know it's not the America that many Americans want to live in.
I see. Now, let me talk for a minute, because we had earlier on, I had Ravi Ragbar who was speaking about the sanctuary movement and how these churches, at least 14, he said already, and many more churches and other houses of worship in New York City are opening their doors as sanctuary. The belief is that because the Department of Homeland Security has said that they're not going to go into these sanctuaries, that these places, that people would be safe in them. Is that something fair to believe, or could anything really happen?
The Department of Homeland Security is fully within its legal authority to enter churches if they have a warrant, if they have a judicial warrant, in order to arrest people. I think, the new sanctuary movement, which Ravi Ragbar is an important leader of. And I was out this morning at a rally in solidarity with Ravi.
So was I. I'm sorry we didn't see each other.
Wonderful.
Yeah, it was a great rally.
Yeah, and Ravi is such an incredible leader in the movement. But you know, the movement in part relies on the belief that immigration enforcement will, for political reasons, if nothing else, if not for reasons of respect, for political reasons, if nothing else, will not go into churches and other places of worship in order to carry out immigration enforcement actions. And under the Obama administration, that was the case. The Obama administration, the Department of Homeland Security under the Obama administration, actually issued a memo in 2011 stating very clearly that ICE and CBP officers were to avoid carrying out immigration enforcement actions in a bunch of different sensitive locations, including churches and mosques, synagogues, other places of worship, and could only do so in exigent circumstances. I don't know if this administration is going to stick with that guidance. It's a real open question, but the strength of the new sanctuary movement is such that their moral strength and their inspiration, I hope, will really serve as a bulwark against overreach from this administration.
Now, during, nothing is the first time, and we know that back in the 80s, during the troubles in El Salvador and Central America, the Contra War that the Reagan administration was pursuing against people there, there were many refugees streaming into the United States from Central America, and many were arrested and deported or put into camps, but many were in churches and were part of the sanctuary movement on the southern border in Texas. Are you aware of what happened with that? Were they able to? Did they actually stay in? How did that resolve itself in the end? Do you know?
Well, I know that the government did end up prosecuting a number of the leaders of the sanctuary movement in the 80s. I don't know that any of them ended up actually serving time. But it's an important form of resistance.
So they actually went after the organizers who were American citizens and said you were helping people break the law, so you're therefore a criminal yourself.
Yeah, and I mean, church leaders and others who are really driving the new sanctuary movement now can speak for themselves, but my impression is that the faith motivation and the moral motivation is so very strong that it's not really about whether it's strictly on one side of the law or the other, because immigration law itself is unfortunately so very unjust.
I see. So it's a matter of people, just like when somebody pours blood on a weapon or smashes a nuclear weapon with a hammer as a simple protest, and in fact of an 80-year-old nun who received several years in prison for doing just that. It's a moral question where, like the Jesuit priests. By my mind, I'm having a brain freeze right now. But the Berrigans and their friends went to jail sometimes for many years at a time in order to do this protest. It's sort of an act of civil disobedience.
Sure, absolutely.
I see. Okay, in the last few minutes, Ruthie Epstein from the New York Civil Liberties Union. What's next? What with this 2.0, this travel ban, Muslim travel ban 2.0? What's the Civil Liberties Union's next step, and what are people going to do about that, and where do we go from here?
Sure. Well, the ACLU and the NYCLU are committed to fighting this Muslim ban 2.0 in the courts and on the streets. I mean, we've seen such an outpouring of public opposition to the first ban and to the second ban, and I think that your listeners can expect that will continue, and we invite them to join us. In terms of the courts, already the state of Hawaii has taken legal action against the new ban. They're seeking a temporary stay on the ban, and their next hearing is on March 15th, which is the day before the ban is set to go in motion. We're seeing that the state of Washington, the state of Minnesota, and the New York State Attorney General indicated that he'll join that case today as well as the state of Oregon are also seeking an an extended temporary restraining order on the ban. So I think we'll see this play out in the courts over the next few days, but there's no question that regardless, we will continue to fight Muslim Ban 2.0 in the courts, in the streets, until it's no longer in place.
All right. Thank you very much. Any information as far as when people can contact the CLU and NYCLU and or get more information from your organization?
Absolutely. So our website is www.nyclu.org. You can donate on our website. You can volunteer with us. We provide Know Your Rights workshops. If you're interested in volunteering with the NYCLU, you can email volunteer@nyclu.org, and you'll get more information about opportunities to work with us. And I encourage folks also to reach out to their smaller organizations that are really doing work on the ground to consider volunteering with them or donating to them, because we're all in this fight together.
All right. Thank you very much, Ruthie Epstein, for joining us.